Good morning. This is Kenneth and Heather with the Advancing Equity Coalition, here to give you a quick recap on what went down last night at what I would say is probably the most consequential board meeting that we've ever done a recap of. So buckle in and check it out. So before we get started, Heather, how are you doing? You were at the board meeting the entire night in person. How was that? How are you doing this morning?
I'm good, and it was amazing to see everyone in person. I haven't been at an in-person board meeting since March of 2019.
Yeah, well, 2020,
Oh
March of
yeah,
2020.
2020.
Yeah, but still, it's been a long time. It feels like it's been a decade for sure since that time.
Yeah, it feels longer than that.
Um, cool. So, with that, Heather, do you want to give us a rundown of what you got to observe in person?
Yes, so the first thing we started out with was public comment. We had a combination of call-ins and in person, which I thought was really great. I think it's equitable that the board's going to continue to allow those call-ins. The themes were about there was a group of teachers that called in thanking the district for the professional development that they experienced and the opportunity to hear directly from a panel of students and parents of color. There was another round of comments that focused on concerns about literacy and the framework and the fact that maybe there's not enough teeth there to it, and then sort of a call to respect students, especially students of color. And then I spoke and I talked a little bit about the bus shortages and the fact that we need to prioritize the magnet schools, special education students, and students in racially isolated schools. Then the superintendent started to give his comments. He talked about concerns about shortages in budget and staffing. He talked about transportation, and he talked about the excitement of seeing students all in the buildings again after so long. Then we jumped into the ESSER 3 presentation. Just some highlights from that. We're going to be spending $74 million on staffing, $11 million on airflow mitigation, and $14 million on tech so that we can still be a one-to-one district. Then there was some question and answer on the ESSER presentation. Then we had a recess. Then we came back from recess and we talked about literacy and learning loss. We got an update from the school name committee and a commitment to change the names of Sheridan, Jefferson, and Henry for sure. And then they really just talked a lot about like what is the scope of changing names and how much is that going to cost. Then we kind of got into the voting part of the evening. So there was a vote on levies and sort of a pre-tax certification that there'll be a public hearing on in December. There was the vote on the consent agenda, and then there was a quick little last minute add on to maybe add student vaccines to a vaccine mandate for staff. That was voted down, and we did ultimately end up voting yes on the vaccine mandate for staff and teachers and any employee or volunteer that has contact with students.
Yep.
And then we ended the night with a discussion on the Page Amendment. And it was a long meeting.
It was a long meeting. That's a lot. That's a lot to cover. I'm surprised that the breadth at which like they covered. And like I said, definitely one of the more consequential meetings, for sure that we've ever recorded, but probably, yeah, within the pandemic as well. So I'm going to share my screen to do the slide of the night. The only presentation that they gave last night was surrounding the ESSER 3 plan and how the district plans to use the about approximately $160 million that will be coming to them from the federal government. And so they had a bunch of different priorities that they wanted to align all of their funding under. I wanted to pull up the academic programs addressing learning loss because that is the one requirement that the federal government gave the district they have to spend at least 20% of their money on addressing learning loss. And so this is how the district is choosing to spend their money. In the presentation, there's actually, in the appendix, they assign dollar amounts to how much they're going to spend on that. And so we'll actually be doing a recap of that in the next few weeks here, but with only, less than 24 hours since the meeting, we weren't ready to share all of that quite right now. But yeah, so that I think this is important for folks to know. The districts last night, the superintendent said that they're spending 29% of their money on addressing learning loss, which I think you can make your own judgments around whether that's enough or not, but that's where we're at. And so with that, we will transition quickly to most valuable moment and do better moments. So Heather, do you want to kick us off with your most valuable moment?
Yeah, I kind of have to split my most valuable moment because between Director Caprini and Director Elamine, last night during the page amendment discussion, which has lots of layers to it, we probably need another video just about that. But I did really appreciate the conversation between Director Elamine and Director Caprini and the way that they both shared strong reasons for their positions and really held open discussion about the parts where they disagreed. And I just really appreciate the open and honest dialogue that happened between them, the deep respect that they have for each other, the ability to have hard conversations in a public space, and just the two of them as leaders. It was really amazing to watch.
Yeah. I agreed. I thought it was like a really good demonstration around like how do we actually figure out things? How do we come to an agreement? How do we talk about both sides of an issue? I think there are lots of conversations in Minneapolis taking place right now that could benefit from seeing that take place in a very quick manner. But yeah, so my most valuable moment, I just want to give a huge shout out to student rep Geber Meskel. And I don't want to just give it a shout out because, oh, the student rep like talked a lot last night, but like I thought she gave really insightful responses to questions, really insightful feedback, and pushed the superintendent, pushed the board to be thinking a lot more critically about some of the things that the district is doing. She spoke up when talking about how the ESSER dollars were going to be used to engage students and how the district has this priority around transparency and accountability, and like student rep Geber Meskel really was like tenacious about getting a straight answer around how are they going to engage students in that process. So I thought that was great. I thought her insights on how a vaccine mandate would impact students was really, really helpful to think about, what are the ways that this could actually disenfranchise students as opposed to support students. So I thought that was really strong. Her leadership on the name change committee and her speaking up during that. And then also her thoughts around like how would the page amendment really impact students as well. I just thought it was a really, really strong showing of like what a student rep could bring and can continue to bring to a conversation, and like how do we ensure that our school board continues to like support that type of engagement from our student rep. So my shout out goes to my most valuable moment goes to several moments from student rep Geber Meskel.
I got to meet her last night for the first time in person. That was really fun.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Her entire term we've been virtual, so yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great to get to say hello to her. Um, so then I think if I can go to my do better moment, the do better moment didn't actually happen. It wasn't talked about in the meeting, but it happened during the meeting. We learned that Senior Officer Kelly and Candace Logan, two strong Black women leaders in our district that you and I have had the pleasure of having many meetings with. I personally have seen multiple times in meetings the two of them stand firm for students of color, really push the conversation. I've watched a lot of times their pushing get met with silence, which is oppressive. And I really respect them both so much in the way that they do their work and the way that they have worked tirelessly for students of color in our district. So last night we heard during the meeting that they are both moving on to other positions. My do better moment goes to the district of Minneapolis Public Schools, really just like, um, why are we silent in rooms when Black women say things that we need to be acting on, and why do we use inertia as a response to them? I wish them all the best in their new roles. I think that they're going to bring greatness and excellence no matter where they go. But personally, I'm deeply grieved that our city and our students are losing their leadership.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just a lot. It's a loss for the district. It's a loss for the city. I don't think anyone um, denies that at all. And so I guess it's just an overall do better moment. Just like that's a big loss. For those that don't know, Candace Logan is the executive director of equity for the district, and Suzanne Kelly, executive officer Kelly, is like the number two person in the district, honestly, behind the superintendent, and like so does a lot of work to support superintendent. The superintendent does a lot of work to support community engagement, um, lots of different things. So definitely a big loss for the district. I forgot. I did want to actually do an honorable mention for my most valuable moment, and I just don't want to skate by this because I do think it's significant that last night the school board approved a vaccine mandate for for staff, for volunteers, for
That's right.
contractors that are interacting with students. I think in Minneapolis sometimes we take that kind of stuff for granted, and seeing all the difficulty that's happening across the country, with very little pushback, it seems like, and actually a lot of encouragement. It seems like the school board and the district are moving towards having requiring all of our adults be either vaccinated or submit to weekly testing. So I think that's just great. So I did want to at least elevate that and highlight that because I think it's worth highlighting and is a big deal. But for my do better moment, this is, I don't know. I feel like I've assigned a lot of do better moments to him recently. And maybe it's because I'm pretty sensitive because he is my school board member or my school board representative. But I'm assigning this do better moment to Director Inns. Last night during the ESSER conversation, there were plenty of things to be pointing fingers at, to be questioning. The Office of Black Student Achievement we were only assigned $125,000. The Office of Indian Ed was also only assigned $125,000. I saw a lot of things that would grab my attention. Director Inns decided to call out what I actually think is one of the most innovative things that this ESSER investment is going towards, which is towards Minneapolis Public Schools creating its own licensure body to help recruit more teachers, specifically more teachers of color, and to help them enter the teaching pipeline. I think that's a huge step when we talk about all of the issues that we're having in recruiting teachers and all the shortages we're having and different things like that. I think this is a really, really big deal, and we should definitely spend a little bit more time talking about this in the future. But last night, it just kind of seemed like Director Inns was like surprised that this was something that MPS was going after or trying to do. And that's not true at all. Like, I think they've spent a lot of time talking about this. And it just kind of, and then, Director Inns was questioning whether, this licensing body would produce the same quality teacher that a traditional licensure body would have. And I'm sorry, are we excited about what our current licensing programs are producing for Minneapolis Public School students? I don't think so. And so I just thought it was a very, very, very odd thing to go after, especially when we are putting $74 million into program continuity and staffing continuity. And there were no questions by any board members about that. But suddenly, Director Inns was going after a $1 million line item. This is less than 1% of the ESSER funds. He was going after that. I just thought that was unbelievable. And and he had the gall to like actually talk about for the first time in over 2 years, we had a conversation about quality of teachers, and it was around whether this licensing body was actually going to do what it needed to do. And they're not talking, the board is not talking at all about, whether our teachers are being evaluated properly. Are they doing what they need to be doing? But all of a sudden, when they enter this new alternative pathway, of course, because it's an alternative pathway, they want to go after it. And, to be clear, Director Inns is a teacher in another district. And so I know he's very sensitive to any alternative licensure or anything like that. But I just thought that was a real poor moment for the district. Again, at the board retreat, Director Inns said something about like he's made many decisions with very little information from MPS actually informing them. And last night he was saying like, he has heard very little about this licensing body. Maybe he's just not paying attention because like this has been a conversation. And I was really, really frustrated and disappointed with my school board representative coming so unprepared and, just, and coming after a line item that, like, again, is probably our most innovative investment that we're utilizing it for. So I just didn't get it. I was very frustrated. I was watching it at home, luckily, because I might have like flipped over a chair or something. Like there would have been no hiding my disgust. There was no hiding my disgust at home. So, anyways, that's my do better moment.
And I think we're clear on how you feel on it. But I will say, I had a physical reaction in the boardroom as well. I know that you and I have heard this conversation and this agenda from Senior Officer Sullivan multiple times over the last few years and at board meetings. So this was not new information. I was shocked that it was like kind of like, oh, I didn't know this was happening. And we also know that the EDIA, talking about teachers of color, this was like a very explicit ask from the EDIA committee. This is like what this is to get directly at the inequities that we have, and this is supposed to be our short video, so we got to stop here. But I'm in agreement with you.
Well, with that, thank you all for listening. Check out our longer debrief if you want to see me go off more about this. A bunch of different things again that were covered last night. But thank you all for listening. Have a great day.
Bye.